Well, good morning. You made it through the maze, made it from University High School parking lot all the way here. Man, thank you. I will say that repeatedly. Thank you for making the choice to come to worship and going over the hurdles to get here, and for your continued prayer and faithfulness. You are an amazing church. Love you. Thank you for all that you do, your servant's heart. Today we continue in our series on for the Tom Rainer's book. Today in his chapter he talks about praying for your leaders. Today I want to talk about the posture of prayer and what does that look like in our lives. One of the amazing stories in Israel's history is what we'll look at. It's found in Exodus 17. But Israel, as you know, has been held captive for 400 years. 400 years they're held in captivity. Pharaoh and Egypt have them. It is free slave labor that they're using to build their kingdom. And now God places in Egypt his man, Moses. Moses is there 40 years. 40 years he's there in Egypt. And he discovers he really is an Israelite. And it just gets the best of him. And he goes off. He literally just goes off. And now he has to flee Egypt. He flees Egypt to go to his father-in-law out in the wilderness. His name's Jethro. And for another 40 years, he lives with his father-in-law. And he takes care of his livestock. And it's while he's taking care of that livestock that God calls this stuttering servant. Moses was a stutterer. And God calls his stuttering servant. And he says, look, I have one message I want you to go give Pharaoh. You go there and you say this one thing, let my people go. And so Moses says, look, I'm not confident in myself. I need help. And he said, all right, you can send your brother, Aaron, and you take him. And so now I know what you're watching. Yeah, now I know. And so he goes. And he says to Pharaoh, let my people go. And Pharaoh says, no, I'm not giving up free slave labor. Not going to do it. And as you know, every time he comes to Pharaoh, he says, let my people go. And he says, no, there's another plague that comes on Egypt. And 10 times he comes to Pharaoh until finally Pharaoh literally breaks because the last plague is the death of the firstborn. And his firstborn dies. And in a moment of weakness and a moment of grief, he says, get out and get all of them out with you. And so they leave. And as they leave, scholarship tells us that there's about 1 million people following Moses, this group of slaves who really have no skill except building. They're following Moses, and they come to the Red Sea. They're out of Egypt, come to the Red Sea. 1 million of them there at the Red Sea. And now Pharaoh has come to his senses. He said, I'm going to get them back or I'm going to kill them. And the greatest army of the world at that time comes descending on top of Israel. Now they're pinned between the Red Sea and this army that's going to wipe them out. And Moses does what the great leader would do. He raises his hand to heaven and says, God, I need your help. And God responds. He parts the Red Sea, you know. And by the way, God doesn't part the Red Sea until Moses steps out in it. Moses steps out in it, he parts the Red Sea, and now they go across on dry land. And you know the story. They go across on dry land. They get to the other side. All 1 million of them get to the other side. And here comes Pharaoh's army. When they get in the middle of the Red Sea, God closes it up and drowns them all. And now they're free from Egypt. But now they're in the wilderness. They're in the wilderness. They're roaming through the wilderness. And they're having a difficult time because they're eating manna every day. Every day they're eating manna. Anybody eat leftovers in this house? Who eats leftovers? Yeah. Anybody eat leftovers for more than 1 day? 2 days? Lori will make a pot of stew. I think it's the eternal pot of stew. It just doesn't stop. It's like it grows. It just grows. And I've eaten all that stuff as long as a week. I can't imagine for a month they've been eating manna. And so God says, look, I'll give you more than manna. I'm going to give you some quail. Twice God gives them quail. Twice God gives them quail. And now it's been 1 month since they've come out of Egypt, and they're at a place called Rephidim. And Rephidim is controlled by the Amalekites, and Amalek is their leader. And they've entered this territory that is not theirs. And this warring people, the Amalekites, have said, we are going to wipe you out. And the reality hits Moses. Moses realizes very soon the sky is going to be darkened by the arrows of the Amalekites. And this ragtag group of people who are not warriors are about to be wiped out. He realizes his own family and all the people that have now been freed are about to be eliminated from the face of the earth. So what does he do? Oh, God, I need your help. I mean, you rescued us at the Red Sea. You freed us from Egypt. Don't let us be wiped out here. I need your help. So, he comes up with the plan. He comes up with the plan. And that's what we're going to read. Today we talk about prayer. Today we talk about prayer and the effectiveness of prayer for you and for me. You know, I think the single greatest privilege you have as a Christ follower is the fact that any moment you can be in the very presence of God by prayer. At any moment, in the very presence of God by prayer. And He hears you. He always hears you. And He seeks to respond to you. In fact, when Jesus came to earth, the one thing He said over and over again was, you could pray more. You could pray more. And He said it this way in Matthew 7, why don't you ask, why don't you seek, and why don't you knock? Because you ask, seek, and knock, that's prayer. As you ask, seek, and knock, God will respond to your prayer. Why aren't you praying? You need to pray more. So why don't you ask for heaven's help? Why don't you just knock and seek and ask? You know, we're facing one of the greatest challenges this church has ever faced. Prayer is the key. Prayer is always going to be the key. God responds to His people in their prayer. And as we move forward, as we take a step of faith and believing that God is in this, we need to ratchet up our prayer, so to speak. We need to do that. So I want to take you back to that hilltop where Moses is, because here's what happens. Moses sees the Amalekites coming. He says, well, I got this one warrior, his name's Joshua. He said, hey, Joshua, I want you to get all the people and all the warriors, I want you to go out and fight the battle. Myself, now remember, Moses is 80 years old at this time. My older brother-in-law, who is now 83, and my aging, my older brother-in-law, who's now 83, and my aging brother-in-law, his name's Hur. We're going to go up on the hill and we're going to pray. And we're going to pray for victory. And so they go up on the hill and they watch down below. And Moses says, oh God, I need your help. Our people need your help. And Moses raises his hand to God. An amazing thing begins to happen. Israel, who has no real war experience, begins to win the war, begins to win the fight. Today, as we read the story, I'm going to leave you with three images. There's three images, three pictures that I pray you kind of cling to. Let's read the first part of the story. It's found in Exodus 17, verse 11. It said, as long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. Image number one, Moses with his hands raised. Just Moses with his hands raised. You see a picture of him there? Moses with his hands raised. You see, when Moses had his hands up, Israelite was winning. When he dropped his hands, the Amalekites were winning. And I began to wonder, how long did it take them to realize that? You know, maybe Moses is seeing this. God, our folks need your help. The Amalekites are real warriors. We're not. God, we need your help. Come on, I need you to come through. And he continues to pray. His hands are up. He's praying. He said, God, come on through. We're praying for this. Come on, God, do your thing. And then maybe he goes, oh, man, all right, I'm going to get me a Coke. And he walks away and gets a Coke, and he's sipping on his Coca-Cola. And maybe Aaron and Hur look and go, we're losing. We're losing. Hey, Moses, we're losing bad. Okay, guys. Moses finishes the Coke. Maybe he comes back up. Oh, God, we're losing. Come on. We need your help. All of a sudden, the tide turns. Israel begins to win. I mean, they're wiping out the Amalekites. Can't believe it. And I love this imagery. And I pray the imagery sticks with you. As long as his hands were up, they won. When his hands were down, they lost. This week, David thought I had lost my mind. And I said, hey, David, I want you to measure me. How tall am I with my hands up? 7'9", my hands up. When my hands are down, my fingertips are 29 inches above the ground. That's a difference of 53 inches, by the way. 53 inches between victory and defeat. Doesn't seem like much. 53 inches between victory, God, I need your help, and total defeat. I got this. Yeah, I can do this on my own. Big difference. And I will tell you, the entire way that I experienced my life is on the basis of that 53 inches. I mean, the presence of God, the difference is based on that 53 inches. We're not talking about a physiological move here. We're talking about a heart that's tuned to God. The hands are raised to God, that your heart is raised to God. And I mean, I can easily take you back to times in my life where, man, my hands were constantly being raised to God. God, I need you. As we approach this time where we start this building, all the time, God, I need you. I've never led in this kind of thing before. This is a huge step. God needs you. Is this really where we need to go? I don't want to be that pastor. I'm serious. I'm terrified of this, God. I don't want to be that pastor. Over and over again, God just came back and said, keep your hands up, buddy. I got this. You don't. I'll show you how I have this. And I'll show you day by day. You just keep your hands up. You let me do my thing. And I'm not saying that, I mean, even when I've, not just this, but throughout my life, every time I had my hands up to God, praying to God, say, God, I need you. I felt the closeness of God. I felt the warmth of God. I felt the leadership of God. And I'm not saying there weren't struggles in that. There were definitely struggles. There were definitely difficult times. There were definitely battles. But through those times, all the time, as my hands were raised to God, praying to God, say, God, I need you, God always showed up. Always a closeness. And maybe you can remember a time in your life when maybe there was a difficult presentation you had at school. God, I need you. I need you to show up here. I can't do this presentation myself. Maybe you entered into a new era of business. God, I can't take this step without you. I don't even know how to do this. God, I need you. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom. Oh, God, I need you. I want to survive these kids. Yeah, maybe that's you. Unfortunately, I can also take you to seasons of my life where my hands weren't here, they were here. Or I said, yeah, God, I got this. This is simple. God, you know, I'm seminary trained. I have 3 degrees. I got this. God, I've got experience. I got this. Discovered real quick in my own poor English, I don't got this. God has this. And it all came down to the location of my hands. Discovered my hands were by my side. It begs the question, if raised hand brings victories to the battles of our lives, then why would I ever lower my hands? Why would I ever do that? And Exodus 17 speaks directly to it. Listen to what it says. Exodus 17, verse 12, the first part, it says, when Moses' hands grew tired. The reason his hands lowered, because he just got tired. You see, we tend to idealize Moses and say, oh man, he was bigger than life. He was more than man. No, he was a man. He was an 80-year-old man. Anybody ever tried to hold their hands up for a long time? Suddenly you can't feel your fingers. Your spirit fingers go away, cheerleaders. They just go away. You just can't do it. Your arms drop. You're exhausted. Just can't do it. Well, his hands grew tired. Sometimes you just get tired. Or the press of life moves in. You know, confession is good for the soul, bad for the reputation. One of my commitments is to, in my own personal quiet time, it's not just to read the Bible and pray, what to do regularly, but I've started trying to journal. For a kid who's ADD and hyperactive, that's hard. I mean, it's real hard. And I've been trying to do that. And so I date every journal entry so I can see the consistency or the inconsistency of my own life, my own spiritual walk. And church, I'm embarrassed to tell you that on December 19th, I made an entry. The next entry was January the 11th. And I looked at that in amazement and say, how did that kind of time get by? Because the pace of life. Christmas moved in, and the pace of life, and it was just forgot. But I also want to tell you, the moment I returned to that, freshness. I mean, it was like God was like saying, been waiting. Glad you're back. Let me share a few things with you, Carrie. You need this. And it was just as though I had never left. Well, God does that. God does that. He's waiting on you. What causes the seasons of prayerness in our lives? I want to mention one today. I just think it's because we just get tired. I mean, you've prayed and prayed. You don't see an answer for that. Now you're just tired. You pray so long, you're just tired. Your arms just get tired and they come down. You're just tired. So what's the answer to that? Well, to find the answer that we need for that, you have to go back to the hilltop where Moses and Aaron and Hur are. Listen what it says. Continue reading in verse 12. It says, when Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, under Moses, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other side, so that his hands remained steady until sunset. Image number 2 I want you to see is Moses' arms are being raised by Aaron and Hur. And one thing I want you to notice here, you don't see Moses saying, hey guys, my arms are really tired. Would you guys move a rock underneath me and hold my hands up? No, Moses just knew he was tired. Aaron and Hur saw the need and said, let's do something about this. Church, I want you to know there are needs all around you. And the second service is the best service we have. You know, you got the first service where they just complain a lot. You got the third service where they send emails a lot, complaining. You know, the second service is bliss. I mean, it's just bliss, just amazing. And man, you guys have been parking over at university. You just started that. You walked through the maze to get here. You're about to walk through the maze to get back. But man, you don't complain at all because, man, you're just amazing. But those other two services that are bookends on you, they need you to say, isn't God great? And my hands are up. I've been praying for you. And you're going to see somebody who's carrying a burden. Are you comfortable enough going to that person, maybe just showing up on the doorstep to say, I know you've been walking through this. Let me lift your hands. Let me lift your arms up because I know you're tired of carrying the burden yourself. Are you comfortable enough going to someone to say, I need to siphon off some of your strength into me because I'm exhausted? Would you pray for me? You see, that's how church works. What's the point? Sizable prayer burdens often require arm bearers. And when you continue to pray and pray, you need arm bearers to come around you, say, I am lifting you up. Do you have that? Or are you willing to ask for that? If they're not asking for it, are you willing to reach out to say, I'm praying for you? Jesus said that when you do that, the gates of hell won't overcome it. You become a force. Let me continue reading verse 12 through verse 13. It says, Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other side, so that his hands remained steady until sunset. And it says in verse 13, so Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Image 1, Moses' hands are up. Image number 2, Aaron and Hur are holding his hands up. But image number 3, Moses, Aaron, and Hur just standing there on the hilltop. The battle's been won. It's over. And this is the picture I get. Joshua and all of his armies are walking back to their camp. As they walk back to their camp, the Bible says the sun is setting, and maybe behind them the sun is behind Moses, Aaron, and Hur. And they see these three silhouettes, and they look at them and say, you did what you could do. And by you doing what you could do, praying for us, we were able to win the battle. And the battle was won because of the prayer. Certainly, Tom Rainier's book, chapter reading on lifting are praying for your leaders. I want you to know, as a pastor, I covet your prayers. Our staff covet your prayers. The leadership of this church covet your prayers. But more than that, pray for each other. You see, this needs to be a praying church. Hands up before God to say, God, we need you. We need your power. We need your strength. We need you really to show up. We don't have this. You have it. But you know, you'll pray long enough that slowly you don't even realize your hands have come down. That's when you need people around you to say, hey, let's stay the course. Let's stay the course. Let's keep praying. And when I think about this, I just have this wonderful image that puts a smile on my face. I've got a 2-year-old grandson. His name's Logan. We call him Lolo. Lolo will come running to me because I'm the favorite grandparent. Naturally. I have the candy. Lolo comes to me, and every time, you've seen a 2-year-old run to you? How do they run to you? Just like that. Not Lolo. He runs with spirit fingers. Sorry, I've seen too many movies. He runs with spirit fingers. He runs to me saying, Papa, Papa, pick me up, Papa. It doesn't have to say that. He just comes. Man, I immediately reach down and pick him up. Puts a smile on my face. Do you know that's exactly how God responds to you? When your hands are up to Him, say, God, I need you. He puts a smile on His face. I got this. Church, that's where we live. Difference is 53 inches. Well, for me, some of you have really short arms. 53 inches. Hands up or hands down. Where do you live? Maybe it's time we dig deep into prayer. Why don't we pray together?